Welcome back, everybody, to the SEL. My name's Infernosis, joined here by my good friend Mick, and we've got ourselves one of the final weeks here for the SEL Valorant stage before we step on over to the actual stage of the SEL LAN coming up this May on May 18th. Make sure you stay tuned for that one, but first, let's make sure we know exactly which teams are stepping into this one. This matchup, Dallas, I believe, confirms one of these teams moving on to LAN. And the second one, unfortunately, I don't think the loser makes it there. And it's going to be kind of a big match considering that there's a lot of implications on the line.
Yeah, I think honestly, going ahead and sit on the stage here for tonight, considering that this game does go ahead and qualify one of these teams guaranteed to get on the land. But considering that even then, we still have a couple more teams to kind of look at their points, look at their placements over the course of the season, and see really what they've accumulated to get themselves to that standing. But this is just a guaranteed surefire shot, and that's why you don't really want to go ahead and miss, especially if you're a team who's, coming into the scene pretty darn eager to get things running and rolling. So, quite frankly, Oklahoma, a new hitter to the scene, at least this season in terms of the SEL, going ahead, coming out with an absolute bang. Number one seed overall, just absolutely running through the bracket like we were expecting them to. And well, now we get to see them here in the final weekend before we get to see them in person, possibly. So I don't know really where they find the points, but looking at this number one versus number four seeding matchup, I think they're going to have themselves a pretty good look today, getting things ready for next month.
Yeah, we see there's two steps before the actual gameplay that leads to a team having a better shot of winning and losing. And one of those happens to be the map ban selection. And that we can
Yeah.
see down below us in this best of three battle. It was Binded Breeze taken off the board, leading up for Lotus of the first map, which is honestly shocking since Sunset has actually been quite popular here for the SEL. Then it was Ascent picked up for the second. You have Blue saying they really wanted to pick up the tried and true. If we make it to a map 3 and the number 4 seed survives through and forces that third map, it will go off towards Sunset as Split and Icebox are removed for those final two bans, leading us to that decider matchup. And we do get to see those, what I would call the similar two in my mind of Lotus and Sunset that look similar, feel similar, but also play so darn differently and lead to different playstyle choices for these teams. So having Ascent followed up by Sunset immediately, I think whoever wins Ascent takes Sunset. I cannot see any other way about it. But I also think this is the number one seeded team against the number 4 seeded team. And this is going to be a hard pressed battle in the laps of UF Blue to try to find their way into victory.
Yeah, quite frankly, I mean, it's a very, very large task sitting here in front of UF Blue here today. Considering that Oklahoma, they haven't found themselves only success here in the SEL, but they found themselves across the entire nation, quite frankly. So they're obviously going to be a big hitter coming into this one. So we do have at least somewhat of a prediction, probably weighing towards their end of the board a little bit more so. But I got to say, I mean, University of Florida, they've had themselves at least a test at getting to this far in the first place, and even then contributing to that last semester as well. They may still have found themselves enough points, enough good kind of placements in general just to get themselves on the land and maybe go for a little bit of a revenge matchup. And this could be somewhat maybe of a precursor to that to get a little bit of studying underway to prepare themselves for that land that comes up in person if possible. But more so looking at the map picks and talking about that Lotus Ascent and Sunset. As much as I like the Sunset, as much as I like the Lotus start things off, it's that kind of usually the middle of the map, the meat of the sandwich there. Unfortunate is looking a little dry. It's looking a little iffy because, I mean, Ascent, nothing I'm always really all that excited kind of bring and kind of discuss too much because there's nothing really to discuss, quite frankly. Nobody really wants to switch things up, add some flavor there. It's the same old for the most part. The one thing I could go ahead and at least kind of put on the field as a possibility, I talked about this on Monday in another league, and I'm going to talk about it right now because not many people really be thinking about it too much. Clove is technically legal at this point in time, so she could be whipped out to some degree at some case and stage, but as it stands currently, I don't know. A lot of teams I've heard aren't the biggest fan in terms of actually in a team composition, but maybe for a singular individual, maybe to go ahead and whip it out as a curveball just to kind of freshen things up, we could see the implementation.
I saw Clove just yesterday, Dallas, on the map of Ascent, and I also saw it on the map of Sunset. And while there was quite a disparaging difference between the effectiveness between Clove on those two maps, Ascent was exceptionally viable for Clove's kit.
Yeah.
It does require you to play a composition more similar to a frag-centric style with that controller, because a lot of their kit is indicative of having more kills than actual
Yeah.
focus on sitting back,
Yeah.
right? So an Omen has the ability to paranoia your team forward as the shrouded step for control. Obviously, it's the change with From the Shadows so that you can also drop weapons and do things like that in the process of using that ultimate, which does bring in options for trading weapons to and from players across different sides of the map. Either way, it's very different in the core kit compared to closed kits, which means your playstyle has to be very different. And a lot of teams aren't going to be adjusted or well adjusted enough yet so that we have the ability to see Clove play to their true potential right off the get-go. But we don't have to worry about Clove yet. It seems that on Lotus, all these teams want to stick to what is standard, what is tried and true here. Who is surprised? Not me. That's absolutely for sure. The Raze, the Viper, that's your go-to selection.
Yeah.
You have that Sky, you have the information. There is a Fade being brought out for the attacking side here of OU, and I think Tommy Gun picking up this is going to be quite important, especially when it comes off towards that B side of the attacking side in this first half. It may fall off a little bit in the second half, but you're also going to have that same fall off come for Florida when they have to kind of deal with that Tasmanian Tiger a little bit more, and it's hard to get that effectiveness and attack off through that A long side when you have to take up so much ground, so much claim for control, and most of the defending teams just typically obfuscate away from that site and just play in for a lot farther back. That information is just going to be too hard to gain anyways.
I think realistically, when we look at Lotus, I mean, nothing's really tried and true about this map just yet. And besides, realistically, those two selections. In terms of the initiating power, you had the Sky, you had the Fade, which is a little bit of a wild card to say at a Tommy Gun, considering we typically see Breach in that slot if anybody else, or even better yet, the Gecko. So knowing that those implementations aren't in place, knowing that we're missing that Breach, knowing that we're missing that Gecko, knowing that we're missing these fresh faces, especially out of that Gecko, quite frankly, because I feel like that's kind of been the standard here recently. Since the Sky nerfs that went through, teams have now kind of deviated over that Gecko, understand that well. Riot's been buffing him more and more and more and more, so it makes that much more sense to really just use the guy because its util always feels like it's up, always feels like it's usable on a round-to-round basis. The only thing that actually is disposable will be that Mosh Pit, which quite frankly is just more of a denial tool or a space, just alleviation, kind of an evacuation. And I don't know if we're really going to see that too much because, quite frankly, Oklahoma, they're going very direct. They're going right up front before the Blue wanted even more. So it's already pushing up A main to see if they can get themselves into a fight. But B is where it's going to be.
Slow push is what you maybe expect in a Pistorama you don't have much control with, but Oklahoma say they want to send it straight through. Quite aggressive. Get full control, get that spike down, and now dominate the playing field on this B objective. Be quite wary though. They'll lose playing control off towards defender spawn to keep Florida off and away from the objective themselves. But Echo will not be denied. It's Polar off the board. A second one for Echo as well. As it looks like Oklahoma may just be giving up this round back in return, as there is no denying the claimant control of Echo. Off at the ghost in hands, control through into the B side, up into heaven. There's nothing that Civ can truly do. They're going to hunt for this player first and foremost. They want to ensure they get this frag. Make sure they get a little bit of extra credits early for it. And it's a Florida Blue dominated round because the B side's too difficult, especially when there's players on both A and C to rotate in to clear out that Oklahoma presence.
Yeah, that was my biggest thing. I mean, sure, why you do get this successful plan down there from Oklahoma off is consider you're going to have a massive pinch coming through from both ends, and quite frankly, you don't know what the approach is going to look like. Maybe a singular player from Dora, knowing that already two players were took back inside that little secret area of the map. You didn't have to listen for that door cue. You didn't have to get that extra information of where these players were. So it was a bit of a curveball, understanding that, wow, there's a lot of player allocation here just naturally that we probably should have gone somewhere else where we could funnel these players in. Speaking of funneling, they look like C may be the hit, and that's going to be exactly what a funnel is. Just going right through those main gates, running into these players over and over again, but even then it may come down to Benji, who can push their way through that B site, maybe squeeze something out. But here in those share of shots, it's going to go ahead and tame Florida a little bit more, so not to overextend here, considering that there are guns that can kill.
Quite a comparison from Oklahoma, realizing the difficulties they faced in the first round and now needing to translate that going into round two, especially when they know that the Florida Blue side are going to be bringing out those SMGs. Be a whole lot more difficult to contend against. Fallback plan made for Benji away from the B site. Great distraction, though, for Florida Blue. Keeps the players inside B, keeps them on their toes, and Oklahoma can hopefully try to find an expedited rush off towards an opposing site to catch a player advantage in some capacity off towards one objective or the other. And with their presence already having been known off towards Mound, Florida Blue make that hasty rotate from B off towards C. And that gives Oklahoma free reign now for a 4-on-1 push through to the A site. but just this
30
range,
seconds left.
Talus, and a little bit of Utah for the Omen cross map with the dark cover slows down Oklahoma enough that will force them to take door, step in through to this B site, and get the plant down here where they've already struggled before. And it's just round 2 to hold on to a post plant scenario on this objective. Florida Blue just needing a quick work of these players stepping forward. Oklahoma, though, get their 2 kills they're hoping for and will collect those 2 SMGs, feasibly making this a whole lot more simple. If it wasn't for the fact that I Touch Grass off in the distance has no victor that cannot be them. It's a dominating performance from Florida Blue once again, as expected, but a 4K from touching grass. That's what you want to see from your Sky, who can get that ultimate up even faster and really start to get that information early with the Seekers to catch Oklahoma off guard come round 4.
Yeah, good start here, at least from Oklahoma, getting that spike down. Make sure to accumulate that money. That's the biggest thing they're going to be looking at here. Able to go ahead and buy those sheriffs up in the meantime, enough of an actual threatening presence to push themselves and get enough war of attrition going their direction throughout the side of the map to get that spike down. And then once again, get themselves into a post plant. But that's where they really start to struggle here. That first round didn't look all that hot. They wanted to default right back more towards that actual spawn side of their home grounds. And even then, didn't really overextend into these other areas of the map. And I think, honestly, now with these full kits available to them, they can start really going for these kinds of ideologies. But meanwhile, it comes down to the loadouts on both sides. So we do see kind of more shotguns and thrifty buys and ecos in terms of the Buckies and the Marshalls and whatnot. That's going to be on Florida Blue's end. It makes things a little more tumultuous to push up, go through that big maze. It is that opposing side of the map of the defender side spawn. So quite frankly, I'm going to see them maybe going right back and kind of just sticking with the game plan that's already been unraveled here. And maybe during that next round, if they hold on to enough, it'll make the call to say, let's push up, let's play a little more aggressive here. But already start things off here. Speaking of aggression, you want to make sure to kind of get your leeway once more, find the emphasis towards the site. And as it looks like C may be the hit they want to go for, they're essentially trapping themselves over towards Mound, because you do see that door opening, you see a player allocation once more towards B, and you have that singular player over towards A, because Oklahoma just does not really want to touch that site. It's going to give enough time, more than enough time, quite frankly, an ample window for Florida to make these rotations as necessary.
Yeah, that meat grinder that is the C side. If you see Oklahoma extend into that space, they have to find one of those 2 kills nearly instantly. Cannot allow the KJ utility nor the Viper utility to go off in tandem in parallel and secure an easy kill and an easy denial of the Oklahoma team. And a good separation from the front 2 line players in that engagement. Hopefully a bit of an overextension from the Viper. They will pay the price in Oklahoma now. Let free reign over this C objective, and you'll have to see a fallback plan made by Florida Blue, but you've also got to see them fall back and stay alive on the escape away from A and B and in towards that C site for this post plant. 2 players caught on the rotate. Now just 2 more remaining. And PXL, I don't know if they really have the space nor really the ability to extend out from defender spawn when the only assisting player, Halibel, has no weapon that can truly contend at that range to close that gap off towards Mound. And more likely than not, is just going to have to play for an exit frag to keep Oklahoma on their toes, as they're just going to bide their time, hope and wait. And if you are PXL, you don't have to die to spike your dust. You have a Bulldog that's plenty fine of a weapon to do so. But Halibel, you know the hell is coming, and they're sending their way towards you, and there's no keeping that utility off of your back. That is a Florida Blue round loss, as expected at Oklahoma. Very good control going into round 3.
And great displays there from the team, understanding what could be at risk here. Knowing that back towards spawn, that nobody's really exposed themselves just yet, so it's more than likely teams playing for an exit frag. You're not going to push waterfall there. You've already had your mound cleared earlier on, even then towards the back of C site. You're not really going to be overextending there because you already had a singular player holding it down out of Winder. So just looking at everybody, spawn makes the most sense. Run right back to it, and even then they allocate a little bit of investment of utility to get there. So even in the haunt, that's the big thing you're looking for. Having an initiator alive, I'm sure they still probably would have paranoid, or at least something to get themselves some leeway off the back of that. But now that we're looking at a full buy across the board, this is that round of equilibrium, that full entire round of Valorant that we like to see and love. And whether or not it goes in the direction of Oklahoma, it's still a bit of a toss-up because numbers already in Florida, and they seem to just be rolling with it.
Squad.
That damage is strung out effectively for the Gators. They're able to keep them back even further. Tommy Gun does refire back. He removes the Sky of I Touch Grass and now gives the player advantage just to a single digit. Comparison to the 2 they had just moments prior. But keep in mind, Oklahoma don't really have any ability to close the distance whether it be from a shrouded step, which you'd more likely than not try to waste your controller to do so. But that raise that's now absent from this Oklahoma side means they're gonna have to use nothing but utility blindly around these corners. That's where the fade though typically thrives, You can close that gap, get that safety net around Hut, and outplant in default, not by box, but instead off inside of open to make sure that that door hold is a little bit more effective for your side. Still, one player up for Florida Blue in comparison. But all of them coming in very one-dimensionally here, off and flat. They do not want to extend a player off downstairs, knowing that it's been smoked off. They're all going to extend out from heaven. Showstopper out for Aiko. This can be sent in through door as a nanoswarm is sent and placed on the spike to keep them off of it for moments prior. The shot goes forward. It's a TK for Alabel. And the player advantage that was there for Florida Blue has now been acquiesced back the other way. Sim takes down their doppelganger. Tommy gun rinses Aiko, and PXL cannot survive for too much longer. Florida Blue shoot themselves quite literally in the foot, Dallas, to give Oklahoma that round win.
I mean, they gave it to Oklahoma, but Oklahoma was able to acquiesce it at what cost, essentially. They lost so many players there on that exit that, I mean, they only left one player remaining, but even then still, it's going to be a big investment off the back of it. Benji's going to be your real kind of full reliance here for the rest of the team, sitting on 6,200. Everybody else is sitting fine, and PG kind of around that just triple digit, just barely over kind of threshold in terms of the money. But what we're looking at here on the board is finally some equilibrium, a little bit of an irony out here in the game plans. Oklahoma not only show that they can find themselves, obviously, some easy plans. They've done it just so consistently up to this point, but finally a post plan that looked just so outstanding that we can finally see the full fledged of this thing.
Great connection from Winders taking down Aiko, and this is where we see a separation in agent positioning for Florida Blue. Not just putting the KJ and the Viper off on that C site and instead moving them at least around Dallas to ensure that there's some spread of that utility in position. There is going to be another issue. Every player you had locked in on that C site has been killed, and Oklahoma aren't wanting the free objective, you could arguably say. They don't trust that C site at all. They're going to extend off across the entirety of the map, rotate into A, and get a free plant clear as well. They'll remove Fizz, really the only true remaining player off on this side. You'll now have to hope that this Omen and KJ can pull off the impossible with only sheriffs. The round is resulting as you would expect, but Oklahoma want to make sure they get through this with as few losses as humanly imaginable, Dallas. The best way to do that is to just not give any space to these players, as Halibel is once again preying on a shotgun up close, and no one's giving them the time of day.
I mean, with only 2 remaining players here for the side of Florida, just not really too much they can do. Both sitting over towards that staircase side of the A map. I mean, they're not going to have too many actual lineups so they get these successful kills necessarily. I mean, Halibel just hoping that somebody overextends and maybe finds that
one
shot
enemy remaining.
Wall bangs. You know, eventually somebody may be holding that corner. I mean, because what else are you going to do? Just kill the time, kill the clock, get yourself in the spot, and maybe you get lucky. But realistically, we're not using luck here. We're using skill. We're using discipline. We're using games awareness. And quite frankly, Oklahoma has plenty of it to spare as they found themselves the third by a pretty large margin once again as well. Holding on to at least 3 of those guns in majority, it just seems like again and again and again, Oklahoma are finding a way to get themselves kind of in the groove of this game, because while the first 2 went to Florida Blue's side, those first 2 rounds are a little bit of a wild card. First one being pistols. Second one being the advantage given off pistols. But ever since then, when that advantage goes out the window, you get to see the real team shine. And Oklahoma not only doing that just in terms of the guns, but now have this ultimates to back it off as well to really drive that point home if they feel like they ever need it.
Rotation possibly available still for Oklahoma, but a firefight being ensured by Florida Blue off towards Mount, and they want to continue to keep this engagement up and running. Winder is able to get a second kill in the process, and even Civ joining in afterwards, and it's Oklahoma keeping this a fair fight despite the initial losses going against them. And the 2 players now remaining have a choice. Do they continue to pressure off towards Mount, where they've already found 3 kills and lost 3 kills? Or do they try to step in towards an opposing site? And B just seems so free, so darn close. Especially when the Viper's pit's been charged up, Dallas, and that snake is waiting to bite. PXL forced to clear out the alarm bot. Will not matter as they extend to take down Benji and fail to do so, leaving just untouched grass, all by their lonesome in a 1v2 with a Viper's pit in front of them. And 2 more players they'll have to cut through in the same fell swoop. This seems impossible. It will be everything at the same time. Oklahoma now taking 4 in a row to put Florida Blue's first 2 they started with completely in the dust.
Yeah, and not really having to invest anything in the meantime for it, quite frankly. Besides that Viper's pit, I mean, honestly, look at Oklahoma. It's just one of those surefire shots just to kind of save the economy. Just knowing these gunfights are going to go in one direction, that they're not really going to have to see too much just retaliation coming in their direction, that it just makes up cleaning up shop that much easier. easier. And knowing that that was a full buy round for the side of Florida Blue, it was worth the investment. Go ahead and shut these guys down for one. You see the next round, they're not going to have nearly as good of an arsenal as what they did in the last, so it makes it worth to say that in this kind of round, we're not going to have to invest just as much. Then when we look at, once again, these very widespread ultimates that just have the largest impact and cost so darn much, that KJ lockdown is going to be available to roll once more. So it's going to be that kind of flip-flop situation where they find themselves what can seem like a guaranteed 6, but it really comes down to Florida to have to step things up for this next round, I'd say. While this one looks like it's not done and dusted just yet, seeing their record thus far, it's not really going to pan out for them too well unless they just want to prove me wrong, and quite frankly, they are more than welcome to.
It's just a setup plan for Oklahoma. Grab that ult orb off towards Mound and win the kind of macro game here, Dallas. And when the ult orb is so close in comparison to the attacker spawn, free-wise, and in comparison to where you have to go for it on the defense for Florida Blue, take it while you got it. Take the advantage where you can. And try to get that utility up and running. As they will, in fact, go forward for Tommy Gun, who did grab it. It's the Nightfall off towards the seaside, even from the shadows being opted to be utilized here for Oklahoma. Claiming space off towards defender spawn, but not claiming the space off towards door, which has been flipped and rotated out
30
for
seconds
Oklahoma,
left.
being caught off guard from the rear. Civ has to claim control back towards PXL, but it still doesn't give Florida Blue enough of a disadvantage going into this. As they're heading into this as a thrifty round, an eco douse, and they've kept even up to this point and are still a very possible threatening presence in this round. Until now just comes to an even worse player disadvantage, being caught off guard for the long con rotate of this Viper up through A main and around now through C.
One enemy remaining.
There's no way to extend. Wow, Halibel though. No, as soon as it starts.
No, yeah, I mean, you can make it expensive there, quite frankly, but with one teammate already lost, you're setting up a pinch terror between the final two, and knowing that clock is ticking, you're playing ring around the rosy until that clock gets to a point where there is no turning back and no possible outcome that really looks good there for Florida Blue. But regardless, though, I'd say that entire round went relatively well, all things considered. Not really having to invest too much in terms of the actual ult economy or the abilities, and even then, just the guns that they had to work with were still clearing out left and right to some extent, and knowing that they finally managed to get the majority of these guns out of the Oklahoma players. So I think that's going to be a key to success here, working around these kind of close quarter combats, bringing the fight to them, making sure you're not lining up these kind of longer angles, which Mound exclusively could definitely be considered. So already going ahead and forcing these players off, it makes some good leeway here to say maybe they're going to go somewhere else on the map. And they have went ahead and put all into this passive setup that's maybe between this 5 KG on the A side, which is your best shot realistically, because this should do so much damage.
Winters, though, losing out on Civ to assist on this push through could be a bit of a problem. Winters almost missing the showstopper, but it goes just far enough on PXL's rotate.
Spike planted.
Take them down, and Polar up from ramp side. Winter losing Frizz on this post-plant scenario for Oklahoma, leading Florida now to a disadvantage. And every single player once again coming in from defender spawn. They'll need to make that choice whether they step down through stairs or in through heaven. And I think this is an Oklahoma side that have done so darn good of a job every single time we've seen this A side get hit, Dallas, to lock down that stairwell. They have to go from heaven in Florida Blue. No, it's an impossibility. It's too darn difficult, especially when a lockdown even was used by Oklahoma to buy even more time. There is no reason to step forward. You can get some kills, you can get some consolation prizes, but you're not getting the big prize. It's going to be a 6th round now in a row for Oklahoma to send themselves even further forward into the lead.
Well, that's because Oklahoma gave it to them, right? I mean, that wasn't really too much of an actual prize. It was just handed on a platter to some extent, considering that they didn't have to push in that circumstance. They already had control of the site. They already knew the spike was going up, but they know they got so much money in the back end. They can go for that rest to rob the rest of the money out from Florida Blue's hands, or at least their back pockets. So considering that right now, we're not seeing anything really being taken away. We're just seeing time given to both sides to really figure out what's going on here. While Oklahoma doesn't really need all that time to adjust, it's Florida Blue who's the one who called it because, well, they're the ones who really feel like they need it. Figuring out what's going on here around the map. I mean, their defensive setups have been outstanding. That last round, I want to say, was a better time than any to really get themselves on the board and find themselves a rifle round, considering that that was the setup where the KJ and the Viper, both with players who usually, as you mentioned earlier, become a meat grinder towards that C side of the map. But even then, with the majority of the A players through the map, still managed to go through that setup kind of at least scot-free towards that tree side. it's a little unfortunate. You have 2 mollies there. You split those things up. You put one piece of utility to back one up, and then you place another to kind of just make sure to disperse your kit so you get that information. And a showstopper was able to slip through completely fine. So I think, quite frankly, that Florida Blue need to go ahead and kind of look at their investment, see whether or not every single pillow, rock, and branch has been flipped, checked underneath, because, well, with Oklahoma, if one thing slips past you, quite frankly, it feels like the whole team is right there to follow.
Anytime a gap has been found for Oklahoma, it feels like a raging torrent of a river stream. Just it's going to continue to whittle away. It's going to continue to erode at the walls of that river, at the embankment, and just tear through the defense that's available for you. It's hard to stop a team that is as good as Oklahoma, and giving them any sort of gap, any sort of space makes it even more impossible. But Florida Blue, hopefully with that timeout, can talk things through individually, Dallas, and try to absolve themselves of any of the problems that have been arising and that have given that 6-0 start to Oklahoma. To count back from the first 2 that Florida Blue had found for themselves, giving 6 in a row is just not where any team wants to be. But Oklahoma, they're testing the waters with an interesting default. Had one off towards C, had one in towards B, and the rest were off to A. But they rotated in as a 4-stack towards A. And Florida Blue were ready for it. Ripping down as everyone ain't going touching grass. 3 players absolved of all of the aggression they had in towards the A site. Now Spike has to be collected, and Benji has to get a kill, and they failed to do so. Leading a 1v5 now in the lap of Civ, and possibly, more likely than not, Dallas, the first round for Florida Blue at the last 6 have gone towards Oklahoma.
30 seconds
this
left.
isn't just a round win by any means. This is a round domination by them thus far. I mean, unless they just give up a bunch of kills over to Civ nearly for nothing, but there you go. A flawless on the board. That's a testament, thankfully, for what that team's accomplished, and I think they've earned nothing less. Realistically, that round is exactly how it should have panned out, and it shows that Florida Blue, even though while there's been a couple gaps here and there in them, whenever the going gets tough, they can actually stand up for themselves and take these fights that are supposed to be won by their half. So already getting themselves a third, they've reached that margin, they've reached the bar minimum that we really asked for out of the majority of these teams. But going forward, I want to see what they can do next, what they have as a game plan now. This A aggression worked out great for them at once, but realistically, Oklahoma, they haven't hit the A side all that often. That's just going to give them one more reason not to do that, to go right back to their home they found so much success in, which is on the opposite side of the map.
Yeah, well, if you can get C successfully, there's no reason not to continue to extend in this direction. But if you lose to the meat grinder that is that KJ and Viper combo on C, if you get unlucky and both of these agents are here in this round, it makes that objective so much more difficult. And we see that's the case. Winners, even with the boost packs forward into C, cannot take down the Viper. But you get that first pick right back in return for yourself and can claim all of A main. You can start to sing out for your team. Hey, I've got control of this space. We've got utility available. I've switched door. I've heard no noise on a rotate in from this Florida Blue side. We now have to make the decision. Do we go off towards C where the whole team wants to fight in, or do we go to the A site we've claimed? And they'll take both B and C effectively. The refrag has to come forward, and PXL nails it. But there's still 35 seconds remaining to do the dirty work for Oklahoma. And Benji's got the rotate in for PXL. It's a 1v1.
30
while
seconds
Aiko's
left.
the duelist of comfort, it's still Polar up with the gun. Aiko had no way to drop the util in time. It's Oklahoma making sure that one round will stay the one round for Florida Blue.
It seems like a state in the game where both these teams are really starting to go ahead and meet blow for blow, quite frankly. I mean, that round in particular was really what I'm going to keep my eyes on here for the rest of the series, knowing that, I mean, sure, it didn't have the biggest differential in terms of score, but it showed what each team was fully capable of when they are ready and when they are hungry for the success. Already, Florida Blue didn't even have to invest any ultimates in the meantime, and they've been holding on to these things for a while. So realistically, knowing that they have been managing to get themselves to this point without that assistance, getting these round wins, but even then better yet, making that last one so darn close, it leaves a little bit of a question in the back of your head of when that's going to be popped, because you see that KJ setup over and over and over again. And while sure you want that Viper to be there, your Viper could invest that towards the B site, still have that orb and wall somewhere else in the map of the presence, and still get it popped to have that leniency, to have that assistance where necessary. But one place you're not getting any assistance right now is at least going to be Oklahoma towards the A side of the map. A lot of concerns coming on there as you see a bunch of cabbages rolling down the main lobby, and you're going to just go ahead and turn tail to
Bring them down.
Yeah, that's what they look like. Big old cabbage.
You know what? That's scary. I agree. As a cabbage hater, I would run away just the same, especially when they're cooked. It's just mushy nasty. Speaking of mushy, though, that's what the defense of Florida Blue on this seaside's been looking like in the last 2 rounds. Not like Swiss cheese as well. They need to find a better way to hold on to this objective. As Oklahoma now are doing the exact same thing, but in the reverse on the attacking side. A 3 versus 2 in this post plant. Yes, Florida Blue have control of the objective for the most part, but they don't have the safe space to hold on to this point. And Polar's even got so much confidence, they'll swing into the objective with nothing but a classic. The Nano Swarm zones off Echo and keeps them away from this spike for the time being. And there's no chance for this unless you stick this through the smoke. And there's just no way that Oklahoma won't swing in after the fact. 8-3. One more round, Dallas, in this first half.
Before the switch.
And Oklahoma have already stamped their symbol, stamped their OU logo.
Can I get this?
Into it. Dominating as best as they can. At least Florida's gotten the 3 that we typically say you have to ask for.
Turret out.
Curious to know whether or not they go for the Baker Mayfield special when it comes around to that flag. You know, jamming it right in the middle of the field on somebody else's home turf. But I don't think Florida are really in a situation right now where they have a home turf realistically. They did opt to go for that ascent map pick, so that should be their turf, but we don't know if that's really going to be the case because we talk about that being such an area of neutrality across the entirety of the Valorant scene. Already get things rolling underway once more. Looking at the C site, mound action again. I mean, it just feels like it's part of the usually scheduled programming over and over and over again. But guess what? Polar this time didn't evacuate and ends up finding 2 in the process and getting a good bit of damage on that last one in the meantime.
That's actually crazy. Polar gets away with that there as well, extending out into open space and finding essentially 3 players at the opposite end of their line of sight and still getting 2 and the majority of the 3rd in afterwards. That's an effectiveness that you just cannot understate the value of, as Oklahoma now find even more value off on the B site with the Viper's
Face
pit.
your fear!
What do you need to do, Florida Blue? There's not much really left here. You have to extend into this space. A lot of this is going to have to come off of the ultimates you have in your hand. The lockdown comes in defensively, but Benji's extension off towards Halibel removes the other ultimate that was available for Florida Blue, that being that from that Shadows. So you do see an escape from sight for Oklahoma. No one being detained, as you would expect to this point. But Fizz reads Civ reading on the other side of the Viper's pit in the open space of that corner.
One enemy remaining.
Destroys them quickly with that Spectre. You now have to hop off that spike. Is there time? There should be just enough since you had gotten it to half. And Florida Blue will in fact reach through to get their 4th in an unbelievable fashion to upset Oklahoma in that last round.
Switching sides.
You had all the resources there really to find that success, and quite frankly, if you didn't get it, I was going to be a little more upset than anything else. I mean, considering that Florida Blue have found themselves so many good rounds, so many kind of opportunities to really capitalize on this game and get themselves in some good standing, I just don't know if they've really taken advantage of every single one of those windows. I mean, we could have seen at least 2 of those ultimates come out for maybe each one of those respective players as we did just out of Oklahoma, because keep in mind, where there's a kill, there's a death as well. So I just feel like those ultimates could have been popped a little bit more often. And even then still, the From the Shadows also, one thing we didn't really mention, but also doesn't have the most impact in the world, is that From the Shadows being buffed now a little bit, where you do get some more interaction in the environment from you, where you don't have to drop stuff. You can actually, you know, buttons, guns, spikes, and whatnot. It makes these rescue missions easier to accomplish without having some kind of a prelim. But already one thing that we're looking at so far is starting the round off with some action, because it's a pistol round. Teams are just going to run at each other. And we're seeing an opt-in for B side and C side. Meanwhile, we got an old Viper just hanging out over towards A, waiting to see if somebody wants to run.
That's a spike, though, under control. This is actually a really good spot for Oklahoma to be in. If you're willing to extend so darn heavily, you have to make sure that you find either spike control early or all 5 of Florida Blue, and you just catch them off guard and get the kills where needed. If you fail to do either of those 2 things, your winning variable then just becomes that pure gunfight, and that's not where you exactly want to be in a pistol round, but it is where a lot of teams find themselves. PXL in a firefight with Tommy Gun, and it does come out with the win, but it's Winders who gets crazy success in this first round of the second half. Oklahoma saved on that desperate measure of this pistol round and extending so deep into attacker spawn and getting that spike control rewarded, but also requiring Winders to get a 4K. Crazy to see, but now they're halfway through that showstopper already defensively, which is a full retake ult that's going to be so good about keeping them out of these chokeholds like that C Arches and like your A main.
I mean, half of that 4K coming out the back of the rest of the team, just providing the damage necessary to get those players to one shot. And that's realistically all you really need. Good damage from everybody there. Understand that pistol rounds, they get extremely scrappy, especially when you don't have that regenerate available on behalf of that Sky. In Florida, they were the ones working with it. They were the ones who lost it fairly early on, all things considered, and just didn't have any real backup. Skies are going to have to be a lot more passive now. I mean, just in general, that's kind of the kit sacrifice that you're taking now, understanding that the blinding light doesn't recover anymore. Nothing on Sky's end does besides that ultimate. So that's why even then more so I think we've seen a shift of Omen, quite frankly. I mean, just having that regenerative ability over and over again, being that smoke, it feels like, I mean, what can you do, right? I mean, it's always going to have some potency in the round, just like a Viper, to where no matter what, at the end of it, it feels like it's going to have that much more uses and that much more of an impact, even just if it kind of goes out nowhere. But even then, who is going nowhere is going to be these
one enemy
Florida
remaining.
players. Funneling themselves into the C site over and over again, off the back of a snake bite underneath their feet. Half of them are vulnerable, and then the one last little straggler is just going to be, well, good as dead, as they find themselves going into the third round, able to finally buy themselves some guns. They didn't get the leniency of those first two in the last one. This is where we saw Oklahoma really kick things into high here in that last half. Now it's Florida's chance to step it up and maybe replicate that same success, if not do a little bit more.
It's that meat grinder, man. That C site's just too darn difficult to extend into safely. At least A is a lot more open, a lot more wide, which means that utility is a lot harder to utilize to its peak effectiveness.
You have two states. You have two ways to approach at it instead of one. C is literally just that arch.
It's just the one arch. You'd have to go through B to get into C from any other angle, right? And at that point, just play it on the B side. Take the speed and swiftness that you're hoping for. It's too effective for a defending team to lock it down, but if you get it, the reward is a much easier objective to hold in a post plant. And speaking of that reward, there's none of it to be found for Florida Blue. 2 players rinsed early in this round, but Oklahoma, despite coming into this one with the same thrifty setup they brought in round 2 from their bonus after the round 1 win of the second half, they come up with these 2 kills, one off in long, past mound with the Marshall, and the other one off towards that A main opening. Yeah, they don't have control over Spike. They don't know where Spike necessarily is just yet, but this is where Benji will step up to the plate, not being flashed by that guiding light, waiting at head height, and Florida Blue are none the wiser about where this player will be, but they do get the shot they asked for, but touch grass. Look at the damage they take in the process, and PXL gets caught off guard just the same.
Yeah, absolutely insane start here from Oklahoma, and able to go ahead and capitalize and grab a couple of those weapons as well.
30
It's just
seconds left.
really where the hammer starts to meet the nail, quite frankly. Going ahead and seeing this third round not only go into their favor, but could do it by a wide margin, albeit. I mean, thankfully, Florida doesn't have to worry about the fight going off and hugging a corner in that regard and letting things go underway. But with 13 seconds remaining, you've already said that this round is as good as done. And
10 seconds left.
I mean, Oklahoma, oh no, in the next round, they're not going to be carrying over the biggest guns. But even then, Sid, if you swing it without Spectre,
Last
even then,
player
2 of them,
standing.
you're going to see that overwhelming presence. You're going to see that last gun trying to be hunted for. And even if it's not accumulated, another one has been acquired by the Oklahoma players. Still a knockdown. It's truly unfortunate, and just another testament of Oklahoma of what their aggression looks like when the going gets tough, and when their game looks like it is their game to take. They take, and it seems like they never really give. They give L's, but besides that, I don't know if their charity really extends that far. So 11-4 here inside this game is just an absolute massacre. I mean, Florida Blue, they have a chance to go ahead and retaliate, but it is going to be a very, very long road to get to that point, especially considering the buy at hand right now.
Yeah, they have to push B as well. There's no other objective with this kit, with the loadout they're bringing collectively as a team.
Oh, this is a nightmare.
You have to take this B side, and I think they're aware of that. That's the showstopper. Almost 3 there, only 2 though.
1 enemy
4
remaining.
kills.
Find him!
Fall there.
He's somewhere!
Get the ace! Oh, Fizz! 1 time. Let them have it. They're gonna get the 12th anyways. But no ace will be found for Oklahoma, specifically for Winders, who still is up to 17-12. Yes, the most deaths for their team. But when you're able to get 17 kills, who cares how many times you die? Your role is still perfectly filled. And Florida Blue, yeah, the only thing not filled for them, besides the body bags on their side, is that scoreboard currently reflecting success. This second half has been nothing but a drought, as Oklahoma has dominated it from round 1 all the way through now to round 4. Maybe even round 5, as they don't even have a full buy for Florida Blue.
The The desperate buys for any kind of consolidation, for any kind of present in the last round has left a little bit half bought here once more, but still some level of presence, some level of kills already on the board on the back of it as well. They have something to play with here. Guardian was able to go ahead and accumulate 1 kill for their end, so that can be weapon upgraded on somebody's behalf. Still Benji on site, not only locked 1, but making sure to get some equilibrium here on the field and knock out 2. A third, he's not done yet, because it's a 4. We just saw Windsor get a 4K and hunt down the ace, but Benji obviously doesn't want it nearly as bad. Could go for it, but hey, when you get more utility, you get a heck of a lot higher chance of securing.
Sentinels can do it too, baby. That's what you're trying to say to everybody. Trying to send that point home. And Benji has been one of the players that you and I, for the last, 3 semesters, have been highlighting as an individual for OU. In every league we've seen them in. And now we're seeing why that's the case. Dominating defensively on that C site and even having the ability to rotate and control A every other round to keep, the ability to stay on your toes, right? And keep that kind of upset. Yeah. Even when you're on a weaker half in the first half, we're on the attack and you don't really see Benji fulfilling the same role that they would be, and it'd be a little bit harder to use that Sentinel. You still see them taking that space with Windsor for the duelist control, getting the objective, and then the post-plant domination from Benji come afterwards. And then when they finally get their chance to shine defensively, they shone straight through, especially that final round with the ace. That's what you're asking for. Map 1 already over, and a ridiculous stat line for Oklahoma. And now they got to play against the anyone can win map of Ascent, but it's hard to envision Florida Blue recovering mentally. They're going to need this break here, Dallas, to find their headspace.
They most definitely are. I mean, considering that the Ascent is going to be their map, I mean, that we talk about everybody knowing it to some extent. I mean, it is the default. While Florida said earlier, it feels like maybe they want to make it their home turf. It is just the most neutral ground you can realistically find. So while the game may carry it a little bit longer, surely it's anybody's game. But we'll find out after this quick little break as we do things on. Let players get ready, and we'll meet you back with the second one.
Welcome back, everybody, to the SCL. Map 1 may be done, but Dallas, there's still a second map and even possibly a third afterwards. If we can see Florida Blue upset this Oklahoma roster on the tried and true map of Ascent.
Yeah, the big selection here from Florida that's got to come out swinging, quite frankly. I mean, considering we did see the first 2 rounds of Florida, this entire series go underway into their direction with the pistol in the backup and Lotus. Things ever since then just didn't look all that hot. Not really finding too much success with the rifles over the course of the rest of those rounds, and even then, better yet, didn't even find themselves around in that second half. Realistically, I mean, sure there was some chances for something, but other than that, it was just all gone and out the wind. So obviously, Oklahoma having a good understanding of what maps they really like to go ahead and showcase themselves on. And I think it's one of those maps where they understand that teams don't really have too much to really adjust off the back of, because it would just came really more so. I mean, while executes do have somewhat of an actual ideology and just a whole game plan behind it, and post plants do as well. The post plants were a little bit slow to start, but the executions right off the get go, it felt like they knew exactly what they were doing every single round they were getting a plant off. And even then, better yet, when they got themselves to the point of having the guns, their just adjustment to the map was outstanding. I mean, making these calls, getting players to kind of flex their way through. Even then, Benji kind of being that lurking sentinel that we're typically used to seeing, and just really capitalizing off that, making these calls, and better yet, having all the shots available to make sure it's successful.
Yeah, I've always pointed out it feels like there's a difference in teams you can see where they guess what the opposition should be doing at any given moment, and a team that knows what the opposition is doing at any given moment. It feels like the call is coming from inside the house, right? There's an inside man something, because every single thing we're doing, they seem to know about. And that's what Oklahoma, it feels like it has been, especially like you highlighted when they were getting into those post plants. So it took them a few moments to do so. They then kind of controlled the pace. They controlled how it was going. And they even realized a lot of the time where defensively we were seeing that Florida side kind of set up themselves on our last map. And when you kind of know which objective has the weakest amount of players, or maybe has the arguably weaker agent composition for a hold on that objective, because we saw that KJ rotate away from the Viper on Seaside multiple times on that map. It was a really effective strike continuously from Oklahoma, and it's just their ability to read the game at a different level. And I think that's going to greatly assist them on any map they play towards, but it's going to be a really good one on Ascent, where the big difference for this map is going to be the teams that know it and the teams that breathe it. And I have to assume that Oklahoma knows this map and breathes this map, because they breathe the game at Valorant. And at this point, it's hard to say there's not a single map they don't absolutely love and can play to probably the peak you can ask for in the collegiate scene.
I mean, this is Ascent we're talking about. I mean, everybody should know and breathe it to some extent. I mean, everybody should live here, quite frankly. So, I mean, anything goes. And that's kind of the biggest thing that I want to dwindle it down to, is more so just compositions and seeing something fresh. I do see already the hovers coming out from the side of Oklahoma. I don't know if they're messing around with us to some degree, but I mean, realistically, come on, Benji. Nah, there's no way he's going to go ahead and lock in the KJ. Just because, I mean, you have no Sentinel. It's too strong of a pick. It sets up the B site way too well. And even then, I mean, it provides so much information, which is realistically what your team needs in these kind of situations. So, I mean, nobody would have guessed this, right? A Jet, a Sova, a KO, an Omen, and a KJ. I never would have seen it coming. I don't think I've seen this composition before. So I'm really excited to see what it provides to the field, because it's just all new to us, right?
Is it so new to us?
I've never seen this before.
Never seen this before. It was actually a kind of a breath of fresh air to see Clove yesterday and kind of see that kit. Unfortunately, most of the kit was pretty much useless. It was just the smokes, and even then the smokes were not perfectly placed because it was a high school league. So, you know, it is what it is. But I will say Clove does look like there's a lot of potential for the map of Ascent, but I don't think it's going to step in. We call it the trickle-down strategonomics style. So it starts in pro, and then it steps into, you know,
yeah, then we're never going to see it.
And then it goes to collegiate. It's never going to be seen, because it's just going to be, it's going to take too long to drop into collegiate.
Pros just think on a different level, and then what happens there, everybody else thinks that they can play at the pros level. And that's how it works.
Hey, I mean, if it takes 2 years to drop down to collegiate, then eventually it gets there, right? It's at least something. But speaking of something, it's kills up for both teams, unfortunately. does seem like Florida are getting the
Spike
butt end
down,
of this.
B.
As Oklahoma have now gotten 3 kills for themselves. Halibel off inside Cubby has to be very aware of the fact that their
One
position is
enemy
known.
remaining.
And Sip will have no problems dealing with that shot. Says, with Echo now all by
Where's the hell?
themselves, and a classic up for Tommy Gun. It's a round win that you're asking for from Oklahoma, and Tommy Gun and Civ get their full house is what a lot of people refer to it as. I call it the buddy ace between the two of them, but they do it all by their lonesome.
Yeah, I mean, already going ahead, getting things out of the way here with the round number 1. I mean, seeing that Oklahoma come out on top, I'm not really expecting anything less, quite frankly. Already going ahead and getting these guns underway, and they're not going to be little cheapo Spectres and Stingers or Buckies. They're going to be your Aries from Tommy Gun. What a surprise. It's going to be Civ of the Guardian. That one I do got to say I like a little bit more so, but Benji and Winter's going ahead, just running the trident through Spectre, whether it be half armor, full armor. It's something to protect that body running that gun.
Protection, you're gonna need a whole lot of protection on this escape out from B main for Florida Blue, as the damage is being wrought out quite effectively with the utility alone.
There you go.
Let's have from Halibel classic out once more, and another
Spike down.
opportunity. The Fizz does get the kill, but look at the damage.
Last
Florida
player
Blue
standing.
are at their wits' end for success in these rounds, which is expected when you lose the first and head into the second. But you can't let a single player rot that much effectiveness from a doomed to die position, Dallas, in the back of Boathouse on B.
I think it's just insane here. That, I mean, already. Oh, one thing I will say in terms of the actual compositions, I do like Winters switching things up, going from that Raze now over that Omen, while Polar feels a little more comfortable on that jet pick. I do like how we have the Omen now being much more universally applicable to everybody. Always used to be kind of a little bit of a hard carry character back in the day, sure, in terms of how many smokes provided. But now, seeing the potential of this kit and seeing a lot more kind of fragging characters step into the shoes of that guy, I mean, it makes so much more sense of really, he's finally starting to find his home, and I think nobody better than Windsor on this map could really fully unravel the potential of this guy's kit. But speaking of potential, you have a pretty darn good hit coming out onto A so far. A nice little split coming through, that 2-1 allocation, but the only issue is, when you have 2 initiators, they're both on that middle area of the map, rather than giving any leeway to these 2 players that are in main.
Utility being dumped out for Florida Blue, and they need to control the space that's being given. With that dark cover placed with the one way, you'll have many
Spike
concerns to
down
be
A.
contended against. As the operator rings out, and that's a pretty effective weapon to bring into round 3 of all things. Now Polar's lost the 2 assisting players up inside Raptors, meaning that this will be a free plant for Florida Blue past that point. Benji will collect a rifle that was dropped from Polar's kill. Defeated. Now can work past that shock dart from Tommy Gun. How does that take PXL off the board? That may just be it. Rinsing through the remainder of this Florida Blue side. Halibel baits out a shrouded step. Not the best positioning past it.
Oh my God!
What a shot! It's Oklahoma! Sing out 3-0 on the rip! What a hit for Oklahoma!
Wait, was Amos just putting the new update?
I gotta ask the same question.
Oh, was that important?
He was looking in a different hemisphere and still managed to
We're
hit
supposed
that.
to be fighting back, right?
Insanity from Polar. Yeah, go ahead. I don't blame you in the slightest, Florida. Try to figure out what just happened.
You've gone through first round. You take that one on the chin. The second round, it's whatever. You gave one player 2 kills and probably about 3.5 kills total in terms of damage. Too much to really give one man. But the third round, Polar puts a wrench in things, throws in an operator, brings out a boomstick. Down goes one. It feeds the mag here for your Sov on the rotate and elsewhere. And then what a hit with the boomstick for Polar again in the flick. Florida Blue. I said it at the end of the game of map 1, Dallas. They needed a mental shift. They needed to be mentally prepped going into map 2 and forget what just happened on Sunsets. And unfortunately, they just got a wake-up call and the flashbacks are hitting.
Yeah, they gotta forget another 3 rounds, unfortunately.
Get added to the tally.
It's just the reality of the situation, man. And even then more so, I mean, you're just tacking on more and more pressure here. Seeing that, I mean, now Oklahoma, not only the operator in the last round, just being an absolute unit, but the rest of the team able to go ahead and do everything to set that up as well. Shock dart kill. enough pressure just held on site where nobody's really budging too much. Still the security of locking a player down towards trees, so you're not really as scared about the result. And even still, when you see that go out, that lets Polar know that they're eventually going to come through from here. They're smoking me off, but maybe if I just take the shot, I get lucky enough. But realistically, sure, you're not running to Polar, but those smokes give all the information in the world to let you know that they're going middle, so whoever else can be here, so help me God, get there.
Yeah, Polar will eventually fall. It's a re-swing from the Stinger of PXL. Catches Polar a little bit off guard, but expect him to be so up close and personal. That is a gun easily able to be reclaimed for this Oklahoma side. They just need to resolve the last two remaining players that Florida Blue have remaining on this map, and both of them are sitting pretty darn static inside of Courtyard, though PXL a little bit farther forward, worming and whittling their way up through and into
One
market,
enemy
where that
remaining.
spike is currently being dominated by possession for Tommy Gun. Fizz gets a refrag. Yes, it's Benji off the board, but the operators collected by Civ. The Odin took care of every competition heading their way, and Tommy Gun, who dominated round 2, finds themselves back in the limelight for round 4. 10-1, Dallas. That's a silver you got to ask for, especially after we know they can do it with a gun and they can do it with a shock dart like they did the round prior.
I mean, still, it's just over here on the map of the sync. You're going to see a minigun in their hands. They're just going to hold down walls, hold down angles, hold out smokes. I mean, it's just choke points everywhere when it comes around to this particular agent. So I'm not really too shocked about the potential of what this guy's done so far. But even then, what I am shocked by is the great decision-making from the side of Oklahoma. When they go for the extension over towards that B side of the map, looking to squeeze out of sight of A, looking to get back in towards wine. While the operator may be off the field, that could be an easy call for everybody else to go ahead and, make their way towards site. But still, you're waiting for the call on Windsor's here. An absolute playmaker. Already on that last map, did so darn much and still has enough for right here to completely shut down the approach, lock up that spike, and just hold ground.
Hey, this is so much control that Oklahoma have been able to gain just on spike presence alone. We saw it in round 2, we saw it now in round 3, and we saw it in... Well, we saw the post-plant scenario for round 4 where they had to step back in through 3
Last
to gain
player
it.
standing.
That's so much that Oklahoma have on the board that Florida Blue, they can't be giving it up so easily. And we even saw that be the case in the first round of the second half for Oklahoma on our last map, where they just took space and played into a huge gunfight, having to rely on Windsor to get the 4K at the time to close out that round. Oklahoma knows the winning condition. It's objective. And yeah, kills are a matter of contention, but Oklahoma also have this, I won't say unfounded confidence, because there is everything proving that it is not unfounded. They have the confidence to win a gunfight. They're going to win the gunfight. They know it. They've meditated on it. They've thought it through, and they've created this mindset that says we're going to win these gunfights, and everything else follows afterwards. It trickles in, and the result is as follows now: 5-0 for Oklahoma.
Get out of my way!
Well, if there's anything for Florida to work with, it's going to be these ultimates. Bladestorm already going ahead and being invested here to start things up because, well, that's going to be the only real gun you had to work with. Everybody else still going to scrap things together, but I mean, Polar having an own unit, cannon of their own, it's not nearly as agile, but it is with the Guardian in hand. I mean, this gun can do work. It can find kills. Problem is when you're swinging into the one unfortunate angle that we knew earlier was already being held by that operator, decide to double down on it, you eventually learn your lesson. You won the last one. It's a 1-1 in that lineup between the two, but Polar isn't done just yet. When you find the necessary kills, what are you going to do? Overextend until you eventually get taught a lesson, and thankfully that one didn't cost your life.
Yeah, and this is where our observer says, hey kids, can we say ego peak? Yeah, I think that's what that has been now the last 2 rounds inside B lobby. Polar has gone for it now twice in a row. Didn't find anything last round. The rest of the team picks up where they needed to. This time, Polar steps up rightfully so, and now Tommy Gun steps back up to the plate, swings and does not miss. Straight through, no, not even needing a second at pitch. But Echo with that Guardian denies Civ's presence up in Raptors. The recon bolt will ping Halibel, and they'll be forced to Shrouded Step, and that's where you're going to hear that Odin rip and tear until it's done. As both players up in Raptors, and a lot of noise to be made, now puts Polar by themselves with only a Vandal in hand. Will they line up? Damage has to be perfect. And Florida Blue knew what they had to do. Fire in tandem, because there's no way else to get Polar off the board. First round win for Florida Blue.
I think the crazy thing in that round, realistically, was just Oklahoma not wanting to commit as much as we're typically used to seeing them. Honestly, Polar could have Bladestorm updrafted on that wall, and then you have a double swing simultaneously that can just realistically mow through every single member of that attacking side. But they just didn't want to overinvest considering that, well, you look at the rest of the team, and it's a 2v2.
Placing swamp
You're
grenade.
saying if we've lost, or if we've won harder fights before, surely we can pull this one out. But, I mean, look at the money. Over and over again, I mean, Polar's going to probably be buying that operator anyways over the course of this game. So, I mean, you just go ahead and pop the Bladestorm because when do you think you're ever going to be on a Nico, right? But still, decisions. All left behind us as we find ourselves in the next is Oklahoma, only with 3 ultimates after investing in Hunter's Fury, not really accumulating the lockdown yet. It seems like they don't really need too much of an actual concern over what they have to work with because they're getting kills. So just go ahead and knock off the majority of what Florida Blues got to work with off the start.
Look at that combo that we see on the A push that comes out for Winders, who just says, okay, I don't really have the kit that's going to be perfect for swinging this corner. The paranoia needs time to expand its width to actually make full use and guarantee a flash. So I'm just going to have my KO send the EMP up over the top, get that flash result, and kind of play off of that. It's the 2 players working their kits together to find the most effective as possible. And that's that first blood that really Oklahoma rely on, it feels like, and are consistent with at the very least. Right? Eventually, Winders does fall and has to have Benji on the refrag. And that's when you know that this is going to be pushing Florida Blue off towards this A site. And that stack up of utility, as deadly it has been for Oklahoma, claims yet another life. A player trying to walk in through Puppy Door into Tree and forfeiting their pressure and forfeiting their presence back in return.
No charges left.
One enemy
Kind of
remaining.
sneakily.
Wow.
10 seconds left.
Honestly, kind of impressive for it, but here's the ultimate finally from Florida Blue and a free plant on B. It's credits, Dallas. But it is a 3v1, and there is multiple angles to be held here for Oklahoma, not playing too one-dimensional on this.
And even then, so just trying to snake through, and unfortunately just running right into the line of fire of another player. It gives Oklahoma well a
Diffuse
6th
spike.
round to work with. I mean, considering that last round, they were able to squeak it out. Good looks for them. The result following, I mean, realistically, Oklahoma, look at that tangent around they went on over and over and over again. They get 5 and 1 on the board. There's a point in time where you're just not really worried about the money.
Turret out.
But this is a time, quite frankly, where you do start to concern yourself with it, because as close as this round would have been, a win or a loss, you're thankful, quite honestly, that it's Tommy Gun who ended up dying there. 7,200 on the field could genuinely buy an operator and stuff enough charity to assist somebody else.
Yeah, there's let the credits flow. There's so much here. The ultimates, though, I think are going to be the bigger thing right now for Florida Blue to realize. They don't have a Bladestorm, which means when it comes to credits, they don't have something to help assist and save, 2,900 on top for saving a rifle. And they have to use them to get them recharged, hopefully before the end of this first half. The no command goes out, and have this player up and running. This should keep Oklahoma at bay, but it doesn't keep Polar
Spike
away from the
planted.
kill feed. Refragging out towards Echo, making sure their doppelganger survives no longer. The backswing out towards
player
Raptor still
standing.
leads Tommy Gun to 2. Because touched grass finds them instantly back, but because the first frag went to Oklahoma anyways, they're in the lead. They're going to continue to hold on to it as Civ pop flashes and swings fizz to get the 7th for Oklahoma. Sun Wukong's even looking for where Florida Blue are. Yeah, it's the afterlife, buddy. Oklahoma made sure of that.
It's just these rounds over and over and over going to be considering that, well, now Oklahoma not only get themselves like even half, best or worst case scenario, but now just carrying on every single round past this point, including that last one. It's just going to be a cherry on top. And knowing that Florida Blue are once again kind of sitting in a Nico situation, it's just another gimme round where these rounds really just kind of feel like even then, when they're early on, they're not much of a concern. You're saying we can rebound, we can kind of make up for it at some point in time, but on the attacking end, that's where you have to do it, quite frankly. You can't really rely on a secondary half to get things rolling because you don't set the pacing at your own time anymore. You don't set the tempo of the dance. And, well, it's Oklahoma who's doing every bit of that. Not really in this round, though, as they do find themselves with a dead jet to start things off, but realistically, I think out of all your players, that's the one you're okay with losing in the process, because that was the one that was either A, sitting in the back of the map with an operator, and that wasn't purchased, so it wasn't being tossed over, or just playing right up in their
Recalling my
faces
boss.
and getting things over and at least getting one. Well, unfortunately, you didn't find that. Oklahoma has shown time and time again that, well, they definitely have the power of the individual players to at least get themselves.
Fallback plan must be made for Oklahoma. Winders in a very precarious position, and we'll have to fall back into the dark cover they've set up for themselves. Somehow still through the smoke, might I add there, Dallas. Scrapes the kill off the board as Halibel will shrouded step forward to extend into sight, and their presence will be found out by the 0 point sent from Oklahoma's side. Civ now swinging in from Tree, spots 2 players, both go into hell, and unfortunately can't be sent there. That's why you've got a fragment on top to force Echo out of that space and allow for Tommy Gun and Benji to rip them down. PXL, what a shot with a Sheriff.
Last player standing.
Now the only one remaining, and you've got to hope this Sheriff has 3 more in it. And unfortunately, the bullets are limited and the kills are limited as Oklahoma have already reached that 8-round differential that they've been looking for, where they got to at the end of the first half on our first map. And maybe look like they could even send themselves past that point with the way that this has been rolling.
Yeah, I mean, 8-1. It's not really a matter of how many rounds Oklahoma gets on the board right now. It's more so how much of a stall Florida Blue can create here, realistically. I mean, Polar not really letting up on the board so far, but I mean, still having an influential round on that round number 3. That was just kind of the start of the end, quite frankly. Already going ahead and set the tone to where this is supposed to be a round that works out for us, and it's just been hemorrhaging since. So, Florida Blue, I have a Hunter's Fury. They don't have a Jet. And almost lining up with an operator nearly for a couple frames there, but anything past that is done to everybody else. And while sure you got a great idea to throw out a flash, once again, Oklahoma just showing their that much quicker than the cup.
Last player standing.
It's just they understand the control of this space. They understand where each player for Florida Blue is. It's that difference between having an idea and just knowing. Oklahoma knows where Florida Blue is. They've got an inside man. The call's coming from inside the house. I think there's an owl drone just somewhere flying up in the air in no man's land, way up in the sky, perpetually giving them VTOL information. What is going on for Oklahoma to seemingly know everything Florida Blue are bringing to the table? I'm not sure, but Florida Blue need to figure it out. And they needed to figure it out about 4 or 5 rounds prior, because this second half is going to be very darn difficult. Because gone are the days, Dallas, we had 2 years back of Ascent being dominated defensively in the collegiate scene, and some of the best teams at the time, like every Houston roster, all 13 of them, and Hawaii and everyone else, struggles on the attack and dominates the defense. It's a pretty even map of Ascent, pretty back and forth, and Florida Blue only having 1 round now on the attack spells disastrous of a scenario for the second half.
I mean, realistically, I mean, that last round was a perfect representation of what I mentioned of how it is Oklahoma's dance. And Florida Blue are just trying to go as best they can, quite frankly. I mean, 1 step behind on everything to where it just feels like they weren't notified of the choreography. And, well, now we're at this point now where they're still trying to figure things out. I mean, trading things off, able to go ahead and set the initial point here, getting themselves the first kill, but equally met almost instantaneously to where it feels like even then trades aren't in the question. It's not a back and forth, one hand for another. It is a mutual meetup spot where it's just left off and 2 parties just take it simultaneously. Already another player knocked down. Florida Blue able to finally manage to get themselves a man advantage, but question is now with the spike down and with 2 players alive, can they just hold out?
Be plenty of spaces to do so. This is a Florida Blue round win as long as they hold on.
1 enemy remaining.
It doesn't mean that it's impossible. The time, though, is going to be the biggest factor for it as Oklahoma now able to re-switch that door. Florida Blue not popping that earlier. Could be wrong for them. Winders, do they just stick it? They do! Oklahoma!
Oh, my God.
That is Florida Blue having 3 players on site. No one stacked over towards arches inside A lobby, and 1 player in tree with door still available to be switched.
Right.
I know PXL controlled walkway in courtyard, and you had them waiting towards Puppy to wrap around the backside of Oklahoma's re-engagement back towards site. But it doesn't mean that you can leave that contingency available for the defense in the opposing side. That little bit of time, Rod out, that little bit of time is just enough for Oklahoma to say we can still have a chance here, especially when you look at the 2 players that are remaining. Florida Blue just lost the biggest chance possible to get their second round win, but they've just taken down the boomstick of Polar in an easy gunfight towards B main inside lobby, and they still have Spike over there, which means this could be a B push as everyone rotates in.
Scanning ahead.
Oh, he had to go for the third shot. But, I mean, regardless, I mean, Florida Blue, that wasn't just their only hopes for a second around that exact situation. That was their only saving grace for a third round, that minimum that we talk about on so many occasions. I mean, because off the follow-up there, you have 4 players alive. Maybe you take one player to take the hit for everybody else, get something done, and then just kind of execute with the round on the back of that. Unfortunately, that's just not going to be the case. And still, with the null command coming through out of the KO and Akko sitting at only 23 HP, Lily being one shot. You go ahead and turn the tables and show that, you know, so is everybody else in the lobby. The 2v4 situation, Florida Blue, they're getting themselves a spike down, but this is not a situation that we are foreign to, as we had just seen it prior in the last, and well, we saw how that goes. Hopefully they learned their lesson.
How many times now Dallas are we gonna start saying something and then it just be completely thrown back in our face? Nico making sure that's the case, so now we're gonna have the rest of Oklahoma try to redo the scenario they had prior. Paranoia goes out. PXL has no problem taking down the blinded Winders. Civ now up inside of Walkway, has to really extend into the back of Boathouse. Halibel is there, and while they will be rinsed forward, that's why you have a lockdown. That's why PXL is still existing in this spot. 5 HP. Are you sticking this? Please, thank you. Woo! Florida Blue get their second round win, and it will not go on a major drought extending into the second half. They get 2, and theoretically, that's all you need. But in practice, you got to show that the game plan has changed heading into the second half.
If we're talking theoreticals, I mean, you can work with 0.
Good. Yeah, I mean, theoretically. Against
theoretically,
Oklahoma, though?
This game could have never happened. Theoretically, Valorant doesn't exist.
Couldn't Oklahoma have technically forfeited and still made land? I'm trying to think. We were having this discussion prior. Trying to figure out which teams have the points. We don't have a Bepic for Valorant, you know, to help us with all the numbers.
I don't think anybody has a Bepic anywhere. That man,
Huntington College does.
I'm surprised. Genuinely, Esports is blessed to have him. There's no way, like anybody, any
he's
other
got his
industry
foot on it at a
does as much
vice
as he
grip.
does.
Yeah, he is so where he needs to be.
It's crazy. But
He is where
instead of
he needs to be.
put things in perspective, at least for the land here, understand that we're now looking at a 10-2 on the board. Oklahoma are keeping their dreams alive here to meet Brute and Parker on land here soon, because we do have confirmation, at least in terms of the old worksheets and the spreadsheets that we have available in the League OS that's available to us and anybody, quite frankly, in the audience. A forfeit came through for LA Tech. We're not really quite sure whether or not their performance from last season gives enough leeway to get themselves into a point, but well, Florida Blues still fighting right here. They still may have a dream of their own. We're not sure if rounds are counted, but quite frankly, they're fighting like they do.
Yeah, Florida Blue. A lot of man advantage until Benji gets that shot out. Tommy gun refrag though. Benji has to be
one enemy remaining.
What a strike! It's a sheriff. You have to hit the head. 22 HP means a single bullet from any pistol brought out from Florida Blue, and nobody can collect themselves enough to rip it down for Benji. When the going gets tough, Benji gets tough for an Oklahoma. Now up to 11. Pistol round for pistol round, bar for bar. They want to be done with this Florida Blue roster who have to force now Dallas. There is no question. They have to buy in this round or have to go flawless the remainder. And that's impossible, it seems, against this Oklahoma team. You just can't be giving up these miracle rounds for Oklahoma. That's 4 now total on this map, not even counting the ones we've seen from the first map of the day.
I mean, and this is a sin too, man. I talk about it every single time. Why do we choose this map? And I mean, Florida, sure. I mean, you have the confidence, but realistically, what team doesn't? You gotta have a specialization here. You gotta have a map you want to opt for, primarily go to. That's just not the case here. Starting things out for the Blue, they do find themselves that first blood, and they're making sure to kind of trade things out where necessary. But even then, as the entire encounter and war that accumulates over here towards the A side comes with the Dust Citadel and only a singular player of Akko being alive here to work with, and that's just not going to be enough for the 3 players remaining on Oklahoma's end. Carrying over guns to the next. One of those being a Phantom. We're going to see Florida Blue force up whatever they can, but they don't even have enough money to actually buy a rifle, or realistically a
Bulldog.
handle. They can get bulldogs, guardians.
That's something.
It really comes down to the armor that's going to be off the back of it, because we don't want 5 glass cannons for this last.
You can hand it over to the boba shop that's inside a lobby and try to rob them of their tip jar, but I don't think there's very many credits in that jar. This place looks like it's been closed down for a while. You're not going to have any credits to be able to buy up something here, Florida Blue. You're going to be as just of a stringent buy as you were the round prior. And Oklahoma does not need to force anything whatsoever. It's not Alabel with the Bucky. No, it's actually PXL up in the face of Winders, who is a judge. And arguably, the full auto prowess of the judge just means, hey, I'm going to get that shot out twice as fast as you with just as much damage, and I'm going to win out that engagement, and my team's going to rotate to A. So your presence on B lobby meant nothing to us. We're going to swing over to the other side.
See really what can get done here. Already going ahead, just kind of picking out these players one by one. Just a trickle effect that not only happens in terms of stratenomics, but also in terms of players and head counts when we're discussing this last and final round. Getting themselves over to one end of the map, knocking off one, making a quick transfer over towards the A site. And as we do see an initial pick coming underway, what happens to the rest of these guys? Well, we're not realistically too sure. You do see the entry coming out. A great TP from Halbell. The confidence is there and the shots are there to follow, but there's still a singular player.
And it's Benji.
Only 56 HP. But good God, if
30
there's a moment
seconds
we
left.
slept on him, we would have been proven wrong. That's why we haven't done it yet.
His position has been spotted, though.
One enemy
Doesn't
remaining.
matter,
Oh my
Benji.
God.
Echo and
Benji.
Fizz.
Don't do it.
They're
to
going to
him.
be sleeping poorly tonight if this one falls to Benji. Grass is
No way!
Attackers win.
with Benji putting the final pin, the final nail in the coffin of Florida Blue. Oklahoma is your king here for the SEL, and they're sending themselves through to the BBC matchup. It's guaranteed. It's in. Put it in League OS, whoever's doing it. 13-2? My God, it's a cent.
I said not to choose it. I always say not to choose it. If, Florida, you got to learn your lesson. One way or the other. This should be a lesson not only to you, but to everybody in the league. If you're the #1 seed, by all means, choose a sin. You have earned that right. That's a right you earn. It's not just given to you in the map pick. If you see a sin, you go, oh, I know this map. Everybody does. You're not special. You're in #1 seed, #2 seed,
You're a little
#3
special.
seed. You can choose it because you special. You're built different. But, I mean, it gets to the point where, I mean, hopefully, maybe it's a wake-up call. Maybe we don't see a scent choose at all going forward in the next fall. If we're lucky, who knows? But I think still, we're still going to get our fair share of it. I mean, Oklahoma have given us an absolute masterclass on it. 13-4 in Lotus, 13-2 on Ascent. I mean, come on, man.
It's control. That's what it comes down to. They controlled the game, they controlled the pacing, and they controlled their destiny even further going forward. And they knew what the winning conditions came down to, and they knew what they had to do.
Yeah.
Take down Florida Blue, and everything led up to it. And they knew what they. Here, what I say. They knew they could do it. They knew they were going to do it. I did not see any lack of confidence. I didn't see them ever stop trying. I didn't see a round where they could have fallen back and said, hey, we'll save 2 guns for, a little bit of a disjointed buy in the next. No, first off, that was never needed because they were so in control for the majority of that. But it was also, we can win even if it's a 4v2, like we saw 3 rounds prior with a huge return defensively to give up that round, which was so needed for Florida Blue to even have a chance back into the game. The end of that first half. Miracle rounds cannot be handed over so easily, and Florida Blue are going to be kicking themselves in the rear because that SEL journey is over. Yes, but there's still more destinies in the SEL that have to unfold before us all, and it doesn't stop just next week. It doesn't stop with the playoffs. It doesn't stop with the finals here. It extends into the LAN Dallas, and I'm super excited we get to see all those teams show up for it.
I'm definitely with you. I mean, there's a lot that's going to lead up here over the course of next month. It's not, the lights come off and they just magically open up once more when it comes around to that May 18th deadline. It's more so the fact that we are going to have updates coming through social media letting you know what these teams' places are going to be looking like. Obviously, you do know, at least off the back of tonight, we do know that we're going to see RG Orange at LAN. We are going to be seeing Bruton Parker from this season at LAN. We are going to be seeing, obviously, your number one seed that we just saw have an absolute showcase here tonight of Oklahoma there. It really comes down to these other remaining slots because these aren't teams that have won out. So realistically, even then more so, looking at Niner Esports, who made it to the grand finals last year or last season, albeit they didn't make it nearly as far as, keep in mind, LA Tech, who kind of got to that final section last semester, but yet still were able to shut down Niners in course of this playoff season. So there's still a lot of wild cards out and about that are really spelling things here for the SEL land, but we're not done just yet because, as I mentioned, we are going to be giving you those details here soon, but at least from us here on broadcast, we'll catch you in May. So be good to each other. Enjoy the rest of your night and be ready for Huntsville, baby, because we'll be there.